UFC 298, what a card. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'd like to speak about four of the fights that I really enjoyed. The first one was on the preliminaries. That was the strawweight female fight between Merab Dern and Amanda Lemos. Now, I was rooting for Amanda heading into that, and she was able to prevail. Now, I'll admit that I tweeted that I thought they were going to give the decision to Merab, just because I thought that since Amanda didn't get the stoppage, that the judges might rob her. But they did get it right, and in the end, they gave Lemos the decision. Now, I'm assuming they awarded her the win based on her striking effectiveness, which, she was really able to light up Merab Dern. Now, that only occurred in little spurts and in moments, but they were well-chosen moments. And Dern's main issue is just her striking and her striking defense are lacking. I'll come back to that, but first let's talk about why I thought they might give Dern the decision. That was mainly because she was able to maintain top position on the ground once they got to the ground. Now, Lemos showed great strategy and tactics from bottom position, because Lemos was able to hang on to her half guard. That means she's hooked one of Mackenzie's legs with her legs, which prevents Mackenzie from coming all the way out to what we call side control, and get in a bit better position to secure a submission. So, kudos to Amanda for maintaining a cool head under that type of pressure, and just knowing what she had to do in order to prevent Mackenzie from advancing to a submission position, and then just kind of biding her time, knowing that we will get back up to our feet, and then Amanda can get back to her superior striking. Now, what I noticed with Mackenzie is she ate an awful lot of punishment, and as she did in her previous fight where she was stopped by Jessica Andrade, again due to strikes. It's a little concerning because you don't really want to see anyone take that much damage, and the skill set that's missing for Merab Dern in terms of striking is the head movement to avoid getting tagged up with punches, but also her overall stance and her guard. Her chin is too far up in the air, and she didn't really have a decent guard. She's also very, very stiff when she's kind of trying to bounce around a little bit, or I guess those are her ideas of a feint, is to do that sort of those little motions. But she's so stiff that when she does go to strike, it's an experienced striker like Amanda Lemos can see Mackenzie's strikes coming before she even lets them go, because Mackenzie's upper body is just so tight. So, for example, a couple times Mackenzie threw some very hard overhand rights. They miss, and then she's out of position to then fire another shot with her left hand, because Lemos avoids the overhand right, and then Mackenzie is stumbling off to her left side. So that's something. If Dern goes back and does the post-fight analysis, hopefully she sits down with her striking coach and figures out on how they can address those issues. As for Amanda Lemos, kudos to her. Her last fight was a loss to Zhang Weili, so there's no shame in that. But I think what Amanda Lemos showed us was just her true presence of mind. Again, because we know how outstanding Dern is on the ground, being a BJJ world champion, and Amanda didn't panic. She didn't try to rush things, and she just kept a calm, cool head, and then was able to get the fight to go back up to standing, where she's dominant. So in terms of mindset, that's one other thing I'm wondering about Mackenzie, which is because she's so conditioned to the BJJ competitions where you're a point fighter and you get points for doing things on the ground, like, oh, I passed guard, I get a couple points. Oh, I swept my opponent, I get a couple points. The BJJ world, you are a point fighter. It's not a submission only mindset, but MMA is submission only. You don't get points really for doing all these things on the ground. It's like once you're on the ground, you get the sub or you don't. I was at a Anne Maria DeMars's final judo seminar yesterday, and that's one point she brought up is like, hey, you're in a judo fight, you're behind, you hit the ground, you almost get the armbar, but you don't. So what happens? What happens is you lose because you don't get points for almost getting a submission. You either get it or you don't. And that might be something that Mackenzie has to work on, maybe with a, I don't know, visualization or just her groundwork coach, to kind of let go of that mindset that's been trained. I mean, she's a world champion in one world, and so it's tough to say, hey, you got to let go of that, and we're in a different world now. But that might be an issue for her. So overall, though, I mean, they did get, I think, fight of the night or something like that, because it was a real barn burner of a fight. So well deserved. Great performance by both fighters, and I'm sure the live audience must have been super happy with that fight from Amanda Lemos and Mackenzie Dern. So kudos to both those fighters. Second fight I'd like to talk about is Merab beating Henry Cejudo. Now, again, I was rooting for Merab. One, because he's he's like a transplanted New Yorker, as I used to be. But in my heart, I still kind of consider myself a New Yorker. So, always rooting for the boys from Long Island. Now, that was a pretty one-sided domination by Merab. And the reason he was able to do that was because he definitely had the by far superior striking. I want to say it was almost more of a gap between Merab and Henry Cejudo than there was between Amanda Lemos and Mackenzie Dern, but that's sort of a moot point. But there was definitely a gap in terms of striking skill set. Merab, if you notice, just maintained a very disciplined kind of boxing stance and a boxing guard. He was able to just start working with his jab and he defended Henry's takedown attempts. And then when they did hit the ground, Merab had good enough defense and good enough grappling to get back up to a position where he felt more comfortable. In fact, he managed to take Henry Cejudo down a couple times. So, Cejudo just wasn't able to get going, I would say. And he has the same issue that Mackenzie does, but perhaps even more glaringly this time. And I'm not sure why this is, but Henry Cejudo's stance and guard were non-existent. I mean, Henry Cejudo's chin was up. It's almost like he was trying to project his chin forward. He had a very upright upper torso. And then the weirdest thing was just he held his hands like with his palms facing forward, making fists, like a little, like I don't know, like a little squirrel or some type of field animal, rodent. Like, just, there's no guard there. If you either have a high guard with both your fists high up by your forehead, or there's the Eastern European traditional boxing stance, which of course is not recommended for MMA because you've got your lead hand way forward. I mean, you could even try doing the Muay Thai guard, which is super high, but just to have your hands at shoulder height with your palms facing forward making fists, that's not a guard. I don't know what it is. Now, the problem with that type of positioning, and also with your torso so vertical, is you can't strike effectively from that position. You're gonna if you're gonna fire a headshot, you're gonna have to bring your hand up to fire it, and turn everything over. If you're gonna try to fire a body shot, you're so vertical that it's gonna be obvious that you're dropping straight down to fire a body shot or shoot for a double or a single. So I'm perplexed as to who advised Henry to take that stance. Who's his striking coach at the moment? And we know that he pranked us and didn't really fire Captain Albarazin, but that's his wrestling coach. I have no idea at this point who's helping him with the striking, but that so-called stance that he has is just no good. There's no guard, there's no stance. It's not effective for anything. So who knows? Henry said if he didn't get the W, he was going to retire. We don't know. But if he's going to take another fight, he needs to address that issue of stance and guard. All right, so kudos to Merab for getting that win, because I think he might have been the underdog, but he's certainly the less well-known fighter, at least in terms of the general public. I think MMA fans know who Merab is, but hopefully now, Merab gets a little bit of play, because he put on a great performance. So kudos to him. All right, the third fight. I don't have much to say about Robert Whittaker versus Paulo Costa. Kudos to Robert Whittaker for coming back with that W, because I think I personally had some questions as to whether he'd taken too much damage in previous fights, but he looked good. He sounded good in the post fight, and hopefully we see him back soon. But again, a very good competitive fight between him and Paulo Costa. So props to both men for putting on a good fight for us at middleweight 185. Okay, finally the main event. Well, I was rooting for Volk because I wanted the vet to make his comeback, but the younger guy, Ilia Topuria, just had too much for him, and people were giving Volk props for the first part of the fight, but the alarming thing for me was Volkanovski's guard, which he didn't have. His hands were, again, too low. Now, they weren't as low as Henry's, and he's by far a better striker than both Henry and Mackenzie. So, I mean, that's one thing. But yet and still, he had his chin kind of exposed, and his chin wasn't as projected forward as much as Henry's was, but it was still exposed. And so, Ilia, on the other hand, just kept that very disciplined, tight boxing stance, hands up, kind of leaning forward a little bit, crouching forward, and that way he's protected, and that way he's protected from, he can protect himself from head kicks, from head punches, simply by keeping his eyes forward and shifting his head, shifting his upper torso. But that also helps helps Ilia set up well for switching up between headshots and body shots. And that's exactly how he was able to stop Alex in the second round. After sort of getting the first round under his belt and being able to judge distance and timing, he was able to press Volkanovski against the fence, and then slip punches, come down to the body, up to the head, and then unload with a combination that just stopped Volkanovski, dropped him, and then followed up with a barrage on the ground. But my point there is, because Ilia had that disciplined guard and stance, it means simply by shifting his waist a few degrees to the right, he can fire a left body shot. If he shifts his waist a few degrees to the right, he can fire a right body shot. And it's not telegraphing, because you're just keeping your guard up while as you twist to then throw those shots. Or he can simply, from that same stance, fire headshots. So my point is there, if you have that disciplined guard, you can switch from head to body, body to head, fairly straightforward. But if you have just your hands wide apart at shoulder height and your head up, you can't, because you have to readjust your hand position and your body position and probably your feet position in order to fire a shot either to the head or to the body. So again, sort of a common theme here between Mackenzie Dern, Henry Cejudo, and Alex Volkanovski, which was they did not have a good striking stance, did not have a good striking guard. Henry's being the worst, Mackenzie's being the second worst, and Alex being the least worst of all three of them. But maybe there's a common theme there that, like, let's have some respect for the striking game and for a disciplined, tight boxing guard, boxing stance. I do know that for MMA people, a lot of will say, hey, don't do the bladed boxer stance. So not the extreme sideways stance that a long, lean boxer would use, but you want to be a little bit more squared off. Kind of sort of like a Mike Tyson, because you don't want all your weight on the front foot, because you just get kicked to death and taken out. Or it'll get, your lead leg's way out there like that. It's like, here, take my leg with a single leg takedown. So, well, I agree that you don't want the extreme bladed boxer stance. You do want a good, tight guard. And so, especially folks that come from either a judo background like myself or a wrestling background, you've got to get really, really disciplined with keeping your hands up right by your head and kind of crouching in and tucking your chin down rather than jutting it forward to kind of brace. That's why wrestlers do that. It's like, you want to not get taken down. You want to maintain your balance, so you keep your center of gravity low by kind of keeping your arms out at your side, way out, and keeping your chin kind of jutted forward so they can't grab your head and bring you down. But it doesn't work for striking. So how did you guys enjoy the fights? Did you win any bets? Are you looking forward to any rematches? Please let me know in the comments below. Thank you for listening.